I told everyone that I was going to be eventually getting to this show, to House of the Dragon. It did take me a hot minute because I wasn't watching it as the first episodes were coming out. I waited until I was done with Rings of Power because I just have way too much on my plate. But now that Rings of Power is off the air, as promised, I'm here with the review for the first episode of House of the Dragon. And as I already talked about in yesterday's video, where I said just in the first episode, House of the Dragon established itself as a better show than the entire season of Rings of Power. It's amazing. I'm going to be diving into it. I really don't have a lot to nitpick with, but there are some caveats to that. So, if this is your first time here, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to support like all of these people. Super simple. Drop a super thanks down below. Join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. More at the end of the video on how you can support in other ways as well. Without further ado, let's just dive into my show notes here because there's a lot going out. So, first and foremost, I have not read the prequel book that this is based off of, and I know some people have made complaints that they changed the color of the skin of some of the principal characters, and there was some accusations of whitewashing and making the show woke. George R. R. Martin was behind those changes and was happy to work with them in making this adaptation, and has said that he feels in some ways these changes were better than what he had rewritten or the one he had written originally, not rewritten. I need more coffee. So I don't want to hear from anybody who's claiming woke or any of that stuff because when you have an author who is alive and who's actively engaged with it, like Neil Gaiman or Stephen King, you can't really pull the woke card when the author's actually there approving these changes. So with that being said, I've never read the book. So I'm coming into this fresh. The only frame of reference I have is having watched Game of Thrones and having read the published material up till the point of the last book, which was like more than a decade ago. George R. R. Martin, hurry up, bro. Like, you're going to die, or I'm going to die before you finish the series, and that's not cool because we need a resolution to Song of Ice and Fire. All right, those caveats established. Let's just get into the actual episode review here. So we start out right out of the gate. We're establishing that the Targaryens are not to be screwed with. We've got 10 adult dragons at their disposal. It talks about how the king, Jaehaerys, the previous king, reigned for nearly 60 years. It said that the realm was under peace and prosperity for the entirety of that reign, but tragically both of his sons died, so he called a great council to choose an heir. It says over 1,000 lords made their way. 14 pitches were given, only 2 were considered. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the king's oldest descendant, and her younger cousin, Prince Viserys Targaryen, the king's eldest male descendant. Now, Viserys is chosen by the lords, and we get the comment that the narrator is his daughter. And the Great Council, it appears, was called to avoid a war being fought over the succession. We do get some foreshadowing here with the narrator saying the king knew that the only thing that could destroy the House of Dragons was itself, which is brilliant foreshadowing for what comes later on down the pipeline. Now, already in the first 2 minutes of this show, in the first 120 seconds of House of the Dragon, we have already firmly established a tight, coherent, cohesive storyline rather than the meandering murkwater that was Rings of Power trying to condense several thousands years of history into a tiny little season. So, okay, all we need to know is right here. There was an old king, he reigned for a long time, he chose a successor, boom. The show is picking up 10 years, or it says 9 years, into the reign, 172 years before the death of the Mad King Aerys and the birth of his daughter, Daenerys, who of course was the main focal point of the Game of Thrones show and the books A Song of Ice and Fire, or she is at least one of the main characters of that series. So right out of the gate, HBO is not they're not pulling any punches here. We get this amazing visual shot right after we go through the intro of a dragon and a rider going through the sky, clouds coming down over King's Landing, over the city, breathtaking visuals. And this is the big difference from the first season of Game of Thrones, where they didn't have the budget for VFX. So if you remember those early seasons before they got big, before Game of Thrones really blew up, it was a much smaller budget and everything was done on physical sets, and we weren't doing a lot of green screen, and it was much more about people and the stories that were being told as opposed to sweeping VFX shots. Not so here because HBO has a budget and they know how to use it. They're swinging that hammer pretty big. As the rider dismounts, we meet the princess, of course, Rhaenyra, and Sir Harold, which I guess is like one of her guards, played by one of my favorite Scotsmen, Graham McTavish. He of dwarven fame from The Hobbit, as well as in the Preacher show as the gunslinger. Um, mm, so good there, and also a bunch of other stuff that I've seen over the years that I really love him in. Outlander, oh my God, he was brilliant in Outlander. I love Graham McTavish, so honestly, I would probably have watched this show just to watch my sexy balding Scotsman. I'm totally hetero, but man, he is man crush. Anyway, we also see some servants who are like dragon guards, speaking words that appear to be controlling the dragon, but he only barely considers them, and they appear to be in constant fear of the dragon. And this comes into play. It's very important for what's going to happen at the end of the episode, which is this is when I get into why the writing is so superior in House of the Dragon compared to Rings of Power. Um, we then see the Princess Rhaenyra walking through the court with her servant. There's lots of the Game of Thrones original theme music here. Dun, 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 dun. It's in here as we're going through, walking, getting sweeping visuals of the city. We meet Rhaenyra's mother, who's pregnant, mentioning that our discomfort is how we save the realm. But I want to be a knight in armor, says the princess. Of course you do, little woke Targaryen. Of course you do. Oh, wait, we're not. No, hang on. She's not woke. We're not allowed to say she's woke because, as we know, George R. R. Martin approved this. I have to make these jokes, everybody, because so many people these days want to call everything woke. It is so stupid. Shut up, sit down, and let entertainment be what it is, entertainment. It doesn't matter if it's a strong female character. It's not woke just because you see fire where there's smoke. Get over it. Anyway, we've seen this story a million times. The little princess wants to grow up and be, a knight in shining armor because the knights in shining armor rule the realms, and that's what everyone wants to become. We meet the king eating his council, bothering him with news of pirates, and another complaining that his brother Daemon isn't present despite vast amounts of gold being invested into him and the city watch that's now under his command. And the king's hand, Otto, letting everyone know that they've just been heard and they need to chill out a little bit. The king will deal with it when it comes. But the king seems preoccupied with one thing: the tournament, the upcoming tournament. And he's going to be having a son. He knows it, and God's be damned, we're going to have a big tournament to celebrate the birth of my son. We then see the princess with Sir Harold going to meet someone in private, a secret arrival. And we enter into the throne room, and Harold gasps in astonishment at the sight of Daemon Targaryen sitting on the Iron Throne. And he and the princess have a little chat, a little banter, as you would, in High Valyrian tongue. Daemon, being the current heir, joking that until his brother produces a son, they're all stuck with him, and he's just enjoying what might be his one day, the Iron Throne. Um, our next shot is the king having a sore on his back analyzed. No one knows what it is yet, but it's growing. They've sent word to the citadel to see what they know. A small cut from sitting on the throne, says the king. It won't heal, and the Meisters want to cauterize it. The hand wants it keeps quiet. Is this is this Stone Scale, like the start of Stone Scale? Is that what it was called? I don't remember. Um, I've tried really hard to avoid spoilers for House of the Dragon, but I have seen visuals, and I know that the king does get very sick and everything else. So I'm making assumptions, but um, be that as it may. There's a scene here with the queen. The king obviously just still doesn't know his brother's back, hasn't seen him since he made him queen of the watch. They're current tournaments to celebrate his son, but the wife isn't convinced that the son is going to be his son. But the king mentions a dream that was so clear. The queen tells him, this is the last time. I've seen too much death, too many miscarriages. I've mourned all I can. Um, the next sequence is really, really, really brutal. And this is one of those moments that helps make House of the Dragon stand out as a much better show for me because I like realism in my show and shows. And sometimes that means things that are a little bit graphic in nature. And this scene where Daemon has obviously been preparing his men and training them, and he calls them hounds that are about to be set loose, and they're going to go forth and clear the city of rabble. And we see them arresting murderers and rapists and thieves, and it's brutal because, like, you're a rapist, okay, we're going to cut your nards off and throw them on a. That was brutal. Oh, you're a thief, cut your hand off, throw that on the wagon. Oh, you're a murderer, cut your head off, throw that in the wagon. This is a brutal scene where they are punishing the criminals of the city by just basically wiping them out. It's very grotesque, not for the weak of heart. Um, Yeah, there's a council called about this, and they are talking about how the prince cannot be allowed to act this way. The Hand says this as they're walking in, and there he is, Daemon, sitting at the council table. The Hand begins to chide him, and there's some back and forth here. We find out that Rhea, his wife, the Daemon's wife, is in the Vale where she is from, and Daemon says that there are sheep prettier than the women there, and the bronze bitch is happier for my absence. So there's obviously no love lost here in the arranged marriage. It's a bit of a showdown here between the two. Ultimately, the king reprimands Daemon. And if he does this again, there's going to be an answering. We then get another scene where Daemon is with a whore in the whorehouse and appears to be his favorite whore, and he can't finish. Performance anxiety. There's a lot of people watching through the windows, but also it comes down to what it sounds like. He's just stressed about the king possibly replacing him. So we'll see. Now it's on to the tournament. There's a mystery knight, Christian Cole. I love Damon's helm here. He purposefully chooses Otto's son as his opponent, and then the guy gets a clean hit on him during the first round, and then the second round he trips the guy's horse, which is a low blow. And then as the king is contemplating this, there's word in his ear. We get rushed off because it's now time for the labor. Um, and this was the scene that I honestly, there are few things that make me cringe, and this is one of those things that made me cringe. And this is what brings a sense of realism for me to shows like this. This sequence where we find out the queen isn't going to survive, and there's a decision to be made: let them both die, or we can attempt to save the child by giving her a C-section, but we're gonna kill her in the process. They could have done this off screen. Totally could have done it off screen and just be like, she died, sir. Oh no, they chose to do it on screen, and it was one of the most uncomfortable things that I have ever witnessed in all my years of television. And this is the way it was. Like, there was no anesthetic and anesthesia, and it was literally, we're gonna cut you open while you are alive and awake, and and it's it was the most horrific, brutal thing I've seen on screen, and just really made me uncomfortable, and just also made me realize, what a cutthroat world where the need for an heir is all consuming, all important, um, and you know the dangers of childbirth pre-modern medicine. Like, oh my God, like sometimes we forget about that it's only been 100 or so years we've had relative safety with childbirth. Um, brutal, brutal. Yeah. While this is happening, there's a brilliant sequence of going back and forth between here and the tournament. There's blood everywhere. There's people fighting each other, knights killing each other, and then there's this sequence between Daemon Targaryen and this mystery knight Kristen Cole, who ends up beating the crap out of Daemon and forcing him to yield in front of everybody. And then we just go straight to a pyre, and there's the queen's body and the baby's body, so we know that the baby didn't survive, and a dragon comes down and burns the corpses. Um, yeah, there's a council immediately called. The council is very concerned because Daemon is far too unpredictable, and they want stability for the realm. It appears that Corlys Velaryon wants to support Daemon. But we find out that Daemon has held many positions before: Master of Laws, where he was a tyrant; Master of Coin, where he was a spendthrift. And the Hand says the truth is that Daemon should be far away from this court. And then we see Daemon in the shadows listening to all of this, chuckling. There's big arguments here. They want the king to name the princess as his heir, and the king's having none of it right now. He shouts. The acting in this scene is brilliant. Crows feasting on corpses, he yells, and the rage, and this is acting. This is what transcends. This is what makes House of the Dragon so much better than Rings of Power, because we have professional actors here who have, seasons behind them as opposed to a cast of young nobodies. Um, Brilliant scene here. Um, this sequence here I was really uncomfortable with, and I think everybody should be uncomfortable with, but it shows the brutality of things. The Hand basically tells his daughter, wear your mother's dress and go to comfort the king, and offer him comfort. Comfort, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And he's obviously telling her, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, offer the king more than just words. You need to comfort him. Um, is this a power play on his point, or is he helping an old friend? It's hard to know. But it was a very uncomfortable scene. Um, we're back to Daemon in the whorehouse, a man of low quality. His men want a speech. Turns out that he makes the speech where he talks about, gives a toast to the king's son, heir for a day, and how, yay, I'm heir again, and celebrates with all his men at the whorehouse. And there's this scene now that was brilliantly acted by both parties, between King Viserys and Daemon. Um, he comes in and he's sitting upon the throne, and he's like, "Did you say it?" And there's a back and forth here, but the king is pissed. He's basically, you're going to address me as your grace, or I'll instruct my men to cut out your tongue. Instead of mourning with me or supporting me, you were out celebrating your rise with lickspittles and whores. And then Damon's like, 10 years you've been king, and never once you've asked me to be your hand. You are weak, Viserys. I would defend you unlike the other people. And this is just it's the last straw. And the king banishes Daemon, strips his title, banishes him back to his wife, and we see the throne cut the king's hand once again. Um, and I think, isn't there something in the books or somewhere where like the Iron Throne only cuts those who are unworthy? I forget how that goes, but I seem to recall that being something. That, okay, some of you who are Game of Thrones nerds, let me know in the comments below. Um, then we get this meeting in the catacombs before this giant dragon skull, and the king is telling his daughter that dragons are a power that no one should have trifled with, that it's an illusion that they control the dragons. The princess knows this, says that their family are no better than other men. Just if they took away the dragons, they would have nothing more than other people. And the king then names her its heir, and gives her this speech about the dreams that their ancestors have, and the dreams that he's had. But this dream that one of his ancestors had, Aegon, I think it was Aegon Targaryen, of the great winter that's going to come, and how all of Westeros must be united behind a Targaryen upon the Iron Throne if mankind is deprived. So this is obviously foreshadowing of what's to come in A Song of Ice and Fire. What's up, Lucas? You want to come up here and say hi to everybody? Come on, Mr. Crybaby. Um, Anyway, foreshadowing of what's to come in the Game of Thrones series, A Song of Ice and Fire, and of course the show that comes after this. So, episode 1. What's up? Come on, come on, come over here. I gotta finish my video, buddy. We're one episode in to House of the Dragon. What is my take on it? What is my review? 10 out of 10. Like, this was amazing on all fronts. So I'm loving it. You got me after one episode. Some people have been like, "Oh, the first 3 episodes of House of the Dragon are really slow. It doesn't start to get good until like episode 4 or 5." I'm like, "You got me from episode. Who says that this was slow?" Um, I'm captivated after only one episode, and I can't wait to continue to watch. I mean, I may do some rant videos about this. I don't know though, because I haven't read the book, so I don't have anything to really rant about in terms of differences from the book compared to the show. But when there's a living author behind the adaptation being consulted with on a regular basis, I generally don't have any fear for it being a fairly truthful adaptation. So I'm loving what I've seen so far. Can't wait to see more. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already. So support the channel like all of these amazing people with a super thanks down below. Join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. There's 3 tiers of memberships. If you're here on a premiere or a live stream, don't forget to do super chats and stickers. Also, check out the Patreon page where my wife, my brother, and I have our own fantastical world. It's a book series, point-and-click adventure game, and tabletop. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, hopefully you'll stick around for the next one because I've got more of this, more Rings of Power, more Wheel of Time, rants, discussions, and reviews and beyond. Until next time, everybody, happy viewing.